Okay, these are a little more challenging now coming up. More completing the square or solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And we've managed in most of the problems to be able to have just a 1 in front of the x squared after we divide out. But if we look at example number 10 here, all these numbers are not divisible by 5, so we're kind of stuck. We're going to have to divide everything by 5, but it's not going to work out really nice. But it is what it is, so we have to do that. So we divide every term by 5. So I'm going to show it this time. Divide by 5. Because I have to have 1 in front of the x squared. I just can't do it with something in front of there. So once I do that, I've got x squared minus 3/5 x plus 2 over 5, and that equals 0. And then we follow the same process, although it's going to be a tad more complicated. First of all, I'll isolate my x squared in next term, so I've got x squared minus 3/5 x equals negative 2 over 5. And again, the square root of x squared is x. So now we want to take half of this number. What's half of 3/5? Well, you could just divide a number by 2, and that's going to take half, or you can multiply by 1/2. So we could take half of 3/5. I can write it over here. 1/2 times 3 over 5 is 3 over 10. So that's going to be half. So that's the number that's going to go up here. Believe it or not, 3 over 10. And that's half of 3/5. 3/10 plus 3/10 is 6/10, which reduces to be 3/5. So now what are we going to add here? We're going to add the square of that. I should have skipped a line here. So we're going to add to both sides. And what's 3 squared? 9. What's 10 squared? 100. So we're going to add 9 over 100 to both sides. Okay. Whew. Now, in order to combine these, we would like to get a common denominator, so I'm going to do some work over here to save myself some space because I'm running out of room down here. And 2 over 5, if I multiply the top and the bottom by 20, that's going to be negative 40 over 100. If we reduce that, that's 4 over 10 or 2/5, so that makes sense. Plus 9 over 100. And negative 40 plus 9 is negative 31. So on the right side, I'm going to have negative 31 over 100. And over here, I know that this is going to be, again, like this. And I guess if you have trouble seeing this, you can always pause and zoom in. This sign will be negative, and this is a square. And what's going to go here? Well, I got my little numbers. That's why you always want to write these up here. X minus 3 over 10. Well, oh man, this has got all kinds of stuff in it. So if x minus 3 over 10 squared equals negative 31 over 100, then we know that x minus 3 over 10 equals plus or minus the square root of 31 over 100. Oops, negative, pardon me. Negative 31 over 100. Don't forget that negative sign, that's important. And what do we have to do? Well, we got to take out the I, so that's going to be equal to plus or minus, and I take out the I because I have that negative. And this is the same thing as the square root of 31 all over the square root of 100, which is just 10. So that's going to be equal to plus or minus I times the square root of 31 over 10. Hope you can see that. Okay. And then I'll add 3/10 to both sides, so I have x equals. And I always try to line up my equal sign, but in this case I'm going to kind of fudge a little bit. 3 over 10 plus or minus, and that's going to be, oops, I forgot the I. Plus or minus I times the square root of 31 over 10. And since, again, this is a complex number, it's got an imaginary part and a real part, we'll try to write it in standard form. So that's going to be equal to 3 over 10 plus or minus the square root of 31 over 10 times I, and put the I kind of in the middle of the fraction bar so you know that it's not underneath the radical. So that was a doozy. All right, got complex numbers. Bad things going on over here because we had odd numbers. So this is very undesirable to do completing the square. This is definitely a candidate for the quadratic formula, which we'll talk about a little bit later, because we have a number in front of this, we can't get rid of it, and we have an odd number. It's even got all kinds of problems. Okay. So that's number 10.